if you look at the street now, that's just like I told my kids, because like 10 years or 15 years before, you can only see the major parts of the cars running on the street are coming from Europe or coming from Japan. But now the same situation is totally changed. We still have some luxury cars, of course, very good cars, because Shanghai, we have a lot. And also not only in Shanghai, but for some tier 2 or tier 3 cities, we still have some luxury cars. But I would say that like the NEV cars are now is becoming more and more popular. And in China, we have more brands. So how to say, we still have like Tesla. It's also a very good seller in China, but we have more local brands, which are much cheaper, really.
Welcome to the Gigacasting podcast. Today we are excited. We have a visitor, meaning Tracy Feng, who happens to be an expert, well positioned within the die casting industry in China, in the epicenter of a lot of things that is going on and happening. So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you for having me here, Staffan and then Fabian. It's really my pleasure to join the podcast. I feel excited and feel honorable for that.
Pleasure is ours, Tracy.
Absolutely. Can you give us a quick introduction that our listeners and viewers know who you are?
My name is Tracy Feng, and I come from China, Shanghai, and I'm now having my company, like a consulting company called Tech Consulting. And with more than 20 years of working in the exhibition industry, and I started my die casting career from 2012 because I was working for the biggest die casting exhibition in China for the past 12 or 13 years. And starting from last year, I started to working in another way for the die casting industry as like a technical consulting or like a marketing expert. So I'm looking forward to help our die casting companies in China or international brands to be more well connected through our platform with our expertise of doing marketing and with the full market knowledge. This is our task and our aim that we would like to support the companies to develop in this very critical situation.
So very interesting. Yes. So what you're saying is that in Europe, we always claim that die casters are very bad when it comes to marketing and marketing efforts. But in China, you seem to actually invest in marketing. How come?
I would not say that European is bad or something like that. I only can tell that maybe if we're based in China, that you will see in the past 20 years or maybe only 15 years that the China die casting industry have different atmosphere because it's really going through some really exciting changes like the Gigacasting, which is quite hot topic for the past 5 years, still hot, but not that hot because we have new topics now. But for the Gigacasting, we will say that our feeling is that we in China, we have total different feelings and atmosphere at the whole overall die casting industry if we compare with Europe. We see the big shifts like the mega die casting, make more use of magnesium alloys and like the semi-solid injection molding. Then this all showing how innovative the China really is now. And even with the market pressure, the industry still keeps pushing forward. This is the overall situation of the China die casting industry. And actually, it's still being like that. But starting maybe from this year, this atmosphere, maybe starting not this year, maybe last year, not that hot, but I would say that the new technologies and the innovations are still there, still coming out. And maybe first we start with the Gigacasting, which I would say that could be very interesting for you because in Europe, I know that now it's really hot. You shared a lot of information, your opinions on that. So I would say that now in China, if we said that for the Gigacasting, it's already developed rapidly from like the demonstration application to larger scale mass production at the moment. Because if you look at the whole stream, from the automakers like XPeng, like NIO, like Li Auto, like Zeekr, Xiaomi, all the names you know for the NEV cars, and also the traditional automakers like Chang'an, Geely, Dongfeng. Actually, they have all already started building the die casting production lines by themselves. And the die casting machines, if you look at them, they're coming from like 6,000 tons until 16,000 tons, like the Dongfeng's new plant.
I have to ask, so what you're saying is one difference is that in Europe it's still a lot of hype around the gigacastings, but in China you think it's okay, yesterday's news, now you're in volume production and now you're moving on to the next technology shift. Is that correct?
Yeah, we would say that because we have talking about like gigacasting, about these large scale integrated parts for more than 5 years, I would say. So now we are looking for something new, like the magnesium and the thixomolding technologies. But gigacasting, actually, now we see the thing is that it's not just a remain discussing topic, because in the past, everyone is talking about if it's worth to invest or make any sense. But I would say now the topic is no longer here because the result is very clear. If you look at automakers, they already use that. So how can the third-party plants do? So if you look at China, more and more the third-party plants, they just have quickly launched the big machines. So it's no longer a topic for here. Maybe the only topic is how large it will be. No result at the moment, but it's just a quickly launching machines there.
Yeah, the cool thing, especially with these machines, is really the race who has the highest clamping force. But when we look on the other side, there's also demand for it, especially when we look now a bit into the figures of the Chinese automotive market. We're still seeing a big growth, a totally different view than in Europe. 45% of the global production of vehicles are in China. And of that production, when we had it figures like in 2022, it was about $30 billion in value, that market, and it expected to grow to $50 billion by 2028. So it's like a 6-year time span. We already passed half of it, and it's a doubling. And you see that also in the strong growth numbers. And I think that's something that sets the Chinese market apart for all the rest of the world. And that also shows that there is enough capital to build up these production lines and to test out a 12, 14, 16,000 ton machine, because you don't know how the casting will be in that size.
But Tracy, I must ask you, I've been traveling actually some in China over the years, but never lived there, and you're born in China. Where do we find the difference? I mean, if you look in Europe, if I'm a little bit drastic now, we talk very long hours, we have a lot of committees, we have a lot of consensus. In China, people see an idea in San Francisco, they bring a big machine, and then they start to try, and you meet people that actually are doing number 48 of rear floors, while some car makers in Europe has done 0. Is this a culture thing, a development culture that differs, or do you see any other factors why Chinese companies are so willing to test new things and do it more practically?
I would say that in the past that we always call here in China, we said that innovations are always in Europe, and for China it's always made in China. So in the past, I would say before the pandemic, since the COVID things. So actually after the COVID, I would say that the same situation changed a little bit, because during that special period, actually everything just stopped. So like the Chinese people, we never lay down, And owing for the COVID, the global auto supply chain is recognizing, and with China's and EV sectors growing so fast after the pandemic, so I would say that it creates so many new opportunities. So that's just popping up everywhere. So why it's a live time for the full of potential. And just now you also asked why China, now we have so many innovations here. I would say maybe one of the reasons is that during that kind of special situation, the Chinese people just close the door. We sit there and we think about what will happen and what we should prepare for the next few years, because everything maybe we are facing, like at the moment we have no leads, but afterwards could be a lot of leads, and how to handle, and if the supply chain changes. So what we can do is not waiting there, not sitting there. So of course, thanks to Tesla, thanks to Musk, he created this crazy idea. And I heard, actually, I studied that like the first team for Gigacasting are consisted with Chinese like mold makers and some people they're inside. So they sit together and create the idea. So I would say that the gigacasting is not only big machines, it's the supply chain. So if the big players are there, like LK, Atlas, if they're thinking or just doing some new technologies, then the supply chain, they have to follow up. They need materials, they need mold, they need everything. And we have so many competitors here. This is a quite critical situation for Chinese production now because we have too many competitions. So we have to always be innovative. The big companies do. They have to keep their core competence and they change their mind. They want to do more innovations, and together with the universities, actually for these years, the universities and academies are playing a very important role in that.
How is the academics stepping into the development process?
Yeah, because for the gigacasting, one of the major problems, the bottleneck, could be the material, because we are looking for larger parts. So the former materials needs to be adjusted. So actually, there's a lot of researches done on the raw materials, not only on aluminum, but also on magnesium. Afterwards, we will share like the magnesium. That's why now in China, actually the hottest topic is magnesium, about the applications, about thixomolding. And if you look at these new technologies, the universities are always there. So the thing is very interesting that in this period, all Chinese people, they know that they have to quickly swift the technologies innovation. So they just sit down together with partners. They create platforms, create ecological partners like machines with universities, with die casters, and they have a group, they produce a project and work on specific applications. For example, like rear floor or something. And then the result quickly just come out. And the interesting thing is, for part of the time, the automaker is also in. Like here, if you look at Cherry, they're sharing a new application, the new parts. So the parts have become bigger and bigger, and everyone is announcing that they have bigger parts, So really very noisy, very interesting, exciting things.
Is that also a bit of the secret behind the success in China, that people sit together, coming from different regions, from academia, from the supply chain, from the car maker, sitting together and working together on the innovations? Because when we see it in North America and Europe, it's more like the OEM does one thing, then pushes down to a tier one, that pushes again the foundries, trying to collect the cheapest thing. And if you have an innovation that brings an advantage, an optimization, a cost saving, then you are forced to share it with all your competitors. And it's more like top-down pressure, but what you're describing is more like the collaboration everybody's talking about brings the innovation and brings the success. Is that the right impression?
Yeah. And another thing is that actually the car competition, the competition between car brands are also very cruel in China. More and more brands and every car makers, they need to figure out the new innovations on their own cars, like ADAS you mentioned last times. And for this die casting solution, technology is also a selling point for them. If we look at auto shows in the past years, because in China, we also have very big auto shows. And in the past, the cars, they only show up with the new models of the cars, new types, and what could be interesting and what could attract the consumers. But starting from like 5 years before, and you can see more and more parts, they show up on the booths, auto show. They are showing to the consumers with different things. They said that, okay, you see, we have lighter car body because of we are using the die casting technology. So it's very interesting if you go to the auto show that more consumers knows there's a technology called die casting. I started my die casting career from 2012. At that moment, almost nobody knows die casting around me. But
my family doesn't know what I work with.
Yeah, but now in China, a lot of people knows, really. They know that even the cook, they know the laptops, your cell phones and cars, they know the technology die casting because of that Tesla. I would say still thanks to Musk. Yes.
But what you're saying here is that, okay, gigacasting, hot topic in Europe, but a little bit yesterday's news in China. It's already in production. You're moving on to magnesium now.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So now magnesium is the hot topic.
The magnesium thing is very interesting. I will say that because why it becomes the magnesium. Still, we go back to, I would say that just now you said maybe it's a kind of culture. But the culture, if we call it like Chinese culture, is that competition is everywhere. So Chinese people never lay down. They just want to be ahead of others. So like the gigacasting, actually gigacasting is a big investment, of course. And everything related to like the cost saving or something. So they never stop their steps to looking for new materials, lighter, more economical, more ecological. So now for the past, I think starting from last year, the magnesium applications and the thixomolding technology is quite often mentioned. We have a lot of conferences and a lot of solutions around
and we
that.
also can see that in the numbers when we go through that. In 2020 you used 38 kilotons magnesium per year, and 2025 expected about 71 kilotons, and 2030 about 131 kilotons. So that's a compound annual growth rate of around 14%. And that is a massive growth. And magnesium is widely available in China, as you do so much water purification for drinking water. Magnesium is a byproduct, so you have a nearly limited resource there.
True. Because for the aluminum, everybody knows that in China, the production volume is controlled, limited by the government. So if we are using the aluminum and you see the market volume is becoming larger and larger, so it will soon become a bottleneck, and they will kill the companies because of a cost reason. So they go to the magnesium because magnesium is the price is stable, and just like you said, the resources is rich in China. So the university guys are working on the magnesium material, and they got very good progress about that. So that's why it broadened the application of magnesium alloys from 3C components into the interior parts to power transmission systems and even for body structure parts, I would say. So the volume just increase from the small to the large parts. So this is a trend for the magnesium alloy applications, like the Buehler's Correct 920. It will also be used to produce magnesium alloy integrated rear floor. And for this machine, it can hold both aluminum and magnesium alloy furnaces, and just switch the production very fast. Only need to change the mold and furnace. Then it can meet the small batch and multi-variety needs, for example. So this is for the magnesium, why it's so popular now.
So this is not a bubble. This is something that will stay there, I guess. That's the sound of it. Because I've heard, I'm a metallurgist, and I started to study in the early 90s, and you always heard the same thing, that next year magnesium will start to grow. Next year magnesium will start to grow. I was 21 then. Now I'm 55. Now magnesium really is hitting it. It took 30 years.
But outside of China, magnesium is still difficult, I would say.
Yeah. It is.
Yep.
It is.
Yeah, we've seen it in last years that people stepped away from magnesium, especially in Europe. It's all imported, and you have to get it somehow, and that risk with the supply chain and shipping routes being congested. That is one of the major things, because you don't want to have your car line stopped because the raw material doesn't arrive in Europe on time. And also then the price fluctuations, where you cannot know what your part will cost. But if you have an endless resource.
Yeah, not only for the raw materials, but also you need like the magnesium, the furnace, and also other things, mold. That's why it can't be, and also for the recycle reason, that actually is also difficult for the markets, not only in Europe, but also in Southeast Asia or in India, because of these recycle things. But that's why that the thixomolding technology is now.
But the thixomolding is so clean. It's so nice. You pour chips in one, and then
yeah.
I think it's so neat, you know. You don't have any atmosphere. You put your pellets in one side of it, and you have a big corkscrew for one bottles, more or less, and out comes parts.
Also, when you compare it to casting liquid magnesium, what kind of hoops you have to jump through with 2-3 furnaces in series for different melting stages, and then everything covered with covered gas, pumps, and whatnot. And then you go to a thixomolding machine where you have a big funnel and some guy pouring in the chips.
And it makes sense. Do the chip somewhere on the countryside. If it starts to burn, then it's isolated. But if you look at a foundry, you don't want it to start burning.
Yeah, because in the past, I would say that maybe nobody think that thixomolding technology, discussed it together with die casting, because in the past, I think it's a total different solution. But
yeah, also, what do you want to have out of it? It's something where we discuss it also all the time with Gigacasting. I said, yeah, we tried it 20 years ago, it didn't work. But then, what was your aim? Oftentimes was the aim to use a more crappy material on a crappy tool to get to a cheaper overall product, and without taking any precautions. And of course, that doesn't work. But now, if you have a clear target, what do you want to reach, and put in the effort, you can have a big impact with any semi-solid technology. And I think the thixomolding is the ideal thing for magnesium.
Yeah. So if you look at like China die casting for the show in Shanghai this year, I think at least like 3 companies, they just released their thixomolding technology on site, including like Haitian and Izumi and the Bowler. They all just announced their new type of these machines instead of releasing die casting machine. Very interesting.
But if you put a figure on this, I think in China, was it last year you made almost 60 million cars, ballpark. If you do 1 million cars more, that means that you have approximately 3 or 4 millions more of gigacastings to be made. You had the rear floor, the battery, you have the front, and then you have the side beam. So say 3 million pieces, and 1 gigacasting machine is casting what? 150, 200,000 a year. Then you get the number of investments that you have ahead of you. So where I'm going with this? Well, if you have the production data for the first Gigacastings in production in some kind of car model, all of a sudden you have the experience, so you can actually design your production facility for the best throughput, best efficiency. And small cars, small margins. If you want to win the race on small cars, you need to make them very, very cheap to produce. So I think actually China has the upper hand here. I'm not saying that you're only doing small cars in China, but I'm saying that the mass of the volume is small cars.
Absolutely, and you see the price pressure already there. BYD lowered the prices for their Seagull car to 7,000 euros, converted into euros. And many people buy their e-bikes for more money than that car costs. And that's a tendency where we really see that there's a huge market, but also a huge price pressure on these cars, and you have to have innovation in there to differentiate yourself. It can be on the software side, or it can be on the hardware side, because with maybe a bit smaller battery but a lighter car, you get the same range. And these things now matter more and more.
A friend of mine bought is it called Seeker 7? It was 599, which means 599,000 Swedish kronas. I mean, it was like 30,000 euros cheaper than the corresponding European or American brand. 30,000 euros. It takes me to Bahamas back and forth a couple of times. So
you can make it several times, even in business class.
Even in business class, yeah. If you travel that much, they'll put you in business class after a while. But one thing, Tracy, I don't know if this is maybe a little bit strange detail from my side, but why is China importing so much scrap, aluminum scrap? You're increasing with, what, 25-30% every year. You're vacuum cleaning Europe and US for scrap right now. Or right now, the last 3 years, but it's surging. Do you have any ideas?
Just like I said, that because there's a big increase in consumption of the raw materials, of the raw aluminum. That's why it pushed the trend to go to magnesium, because the market demands more and more. That's why I think we have to import.
Yeah, because now the price of scrap is almost the same as the price of primary.
Yeah, most times it's even more expensive to use good secondary scraps instead of primary, as everybody's now forcing on the secondary alloys into their products at the same time.
Yeah, I think we have to come back on this. Another question I have: how is sustainability considered in China in all these developments? Is there a big discussion, or is it just something you don't talk about?
It's already a big discussion. It's already a big discussion because everybody knows that the carbon footprint has to be considered in the very near future. So, of course, the trends all started from the international brands like Bühler. Like this year, they emphasize on how the technologies matches the energy saving and it fits the requirement of this environment protection. So actually, the topic is quite often mentioned now in the technical conferences, and some suppliers already give their solutions. And like now in China, there's another hot topic is regarding going abroad because everybody knows there's very cruel competition in China. So now the Chinese people, they want to go abroad and to seek for new opportunities. Like they go to Southeast Asia because maybe it could be a second base for them to export cars, export parts to Europe and US. So everybody knows that if you're going abroad outside of China, then you can never neglect the environment protection things. Like we have the conference in Thailand, and the Thailand government always mentioned that if you want to rent a factory here in Thailand, you want to build up a factory, we need to consider the environmental rules if you obey for that, because in Thailand it's quite critical. If you look at magnesium, it's also the environmental protection reason was considered inside.
Are there any governmental or regulatory demands coming around the corner, or do you see a pressure from government to reduce the carbon dioxide footprint of products, or is it on a do it if you like because it's a good impression to the customer thing? Or is it a governmental thing to reduce the carbon dioxide emission?
It's a global topic, I would say. If you for Europe, just like from 2026, I heard that from January that now the carbon footprint needs to be considered to these manufacturing industries. So I would say it will affect everything. And even in China, for these environmental protection things, already considered for many, many years. So everybody knows that will be a bottleneck. Only for that die casting people, they are just waiting and look when it will happen. And they need to be fast. I would say that maybe for 2025 or 2026, they have to, for 90% of the producers, they have to consider this point because it's already there.
When we talk about the sustainability, I would like to place a bold statement on you and try to get your opinion on that. Because when we look, where are the sustainability goals and target coming from? They're coming from Europe, from European OEMs, forcing that into their supply chain. And we're seeing it now with the Gigacasting, now coming up magnesium. Will we see the solution to the sustainability targets from coming from China and not developed? As you directly say, yes. Can you elaborate a bit? Why do you think also that China will solve that?
I would say a lot of people is working on that. Like I said, that for pushing the new technology of thixomolding technology and also the studies on these new materials, everything is just around these sustainability things. Because not only China, now China is ready for the whole world. Just like I think one day when we discussed with Fabian, if you still remember that we said that for some big projects, for some innovations, for some R&D things, they're considering to move to China. So now I would say if you compare with before, China is not only made in China. We are becoming more and more diversity sites. We are thinking more than before. So for the sustainability, it's not only Europe or in China. In China, just like I said, actually it's not a new topic for China because like we also have the organic agriculture. So everything is regarding the environmental protection. A lot of factories are just move out from Shanghai to some cities. That's why if you look at industrial areas in China, before everyone knows that we have the Shanghai area, like the Yangtze Delta area, and it's the most modern industry zone in China. And now the factories are going to mid-China, which quite close, but it's already not Yangtze Delta industry zones, I would say. So that's because they know that for the foundry things, actually, it can't be last for long in some modern cities. So the sustainability is everywhere in China. The only thing that in the past we have no good solutions for that, like how can we avoid the gas, for example, in the factory before. But if now you go to the factories, it's clean, you can never imagine it's a die casting company. It's also kind of sustainability, I would say, because in the past we always said that like the foundry factories, we are lacking of the talents. Why? Because the working circumstance is not good. Gas, oil, and the smelly things. That's why no talents would like to come to our industry. And now we are keeping the environment clean. And we tell the talents, the youngsters, the new generations that being part of the die casting industry is not a thing like you imagined before. We are already a very modern industry, and everything because of the mindset of this sustainability. We are looking for a long-term development for this industry as well.
Another aspect of the long-term development, we see more and more Chinese die casters establishing in Europe. Now, Europe is not the center of the world. We're only 340 million people or 400 something. But anyway, how do you see this trend? Is it some foundries following their customers like the BYDs and the Geelys, or is it an active way of increasing their market by going from continent to continent?
Just like I said, that because competition is still cruel in China, and for these companies, they are actually much stronger than those new plants. So they're looking for more prospective markets like Europe and US. Of course, for US it's very, very difficult. So they can only target in Europe. And so I would say that they're looking for better customers from like BBA or some tier 1 suppliers. That's why they want to go there. Because for these companies, for these automakers, they like to have the vendors around them.
So it makes it easier for them to start their production as well, because they have the same companies they used to work with. They know that with these companies they can work with in the way they work in China, collaborating as a group to get to the result and not following the European top-down supply chain management.
Sure,
Yeah.
but cost efficient is always a bottleneck. You see, if the Chinese cars goes to Europe, then of course it gives more pressure to the European brands. And for competing the market, they have to be more cost efficient. So on one hand, still need to have higher quality. On the other hand, they still need to lower the cost. So how can they do? So from my point of view, as I heard from my friends, actually, they have to modify the supply chains. Maybe for part of the cars, better quality, higher quality, more expensive. But maybe for some parts, I cannot say which part, but they might find the ways to lower the cost. Maybe not for these major parts, but for some, maybe for wheels or maybe for some other parts, they try to modify the supply chain to lower the cost. Many ways, yes.
But I think this is a global thing, I think the transportation sector is undergoing great changes. When I was a kid, we spoke about cars. Today, if you go out on the street, you have new energy vehicles, you have ICEs, you have probably pretty soon self-driving cabs, you have electrical bicycles, electrical motorcycles, you have freewheelers, you have scooters, you have gone from bicycles and cars into 8-10 different machines that we use for mass transportation, basically. And you have an urbanization that is very strong. And I have 3 boys, 3 kids, and 2 out of 3 are totally uninterested to have a car. And I mean, they are engineers and working. They're old. So I think we will see a bigger diversification in the future. And here comes my worry about Europe, because I think development speed is everything to cope with all these variants.
Yeah, and let's say that maybe die casting is not only for cars. Actually, it's have wider applications. So I think if for a company, if we plan like try to expand to another country as a start, maybe we just go to our areas we are more familiar with. But if you look at technology itself, actually, you have big imagination around that. Like here now in China, the hottest topic is no longer how aluminum or magnesium we use for cars only. We are focusing on other industries like the robotics, like 6Gs, the other applications are also becoming more and more popular now.
Server hall cooling. AI is quadrupling the number of server halls. This sounds so crazy, but when you start to look at the numbers of circuit boards with the processors on racks to cope with self-driving cars and AI, good business.
Absolutely. True. But then you need to market your solutions to these companies. And I think that several times we already defined it. That's the big bottleneck of the foundry industry, that they're so used to the OEM tier 1 portals that they never need to do any marketing, and now it falls them on their feet as when the volume's going down or the competition increases, you have to stand out. And if they have no presence to stand on besides an account to a tier 1 portal, you have a very, very bad time. And I think that's something we see in Europe. And something that we also discussed in our European episode is that we see in the sales numbers of the vehicles from Volkswagen, from Audi, from Porsche, it's also BMW and Mercedes-Benz, all of these companies losing sales in the double-digit percentages. Can you give us a view from China on the European, more like luxury vehicles that are made by these companies? Why are they dropping? Are they not up to the taste of the Chinese customer, or are they just too expensive or lack features that the market wants?
If you look at the street now, that's just like I told my kids, because like 10 years or 15 years before, you can only see the major parts of the cars running on the street are coming from Europe or coming from Japan. But now the same situation is totally changed. We still have some luxury cars, of course, very good cars, because Shanghai, we have a lot. And also not only in Shanghai, but for some tier 2 or tier 3 cities, we still have some luxury cars. But I would say that like the NEV cars are now is becoming more and more popular. And in China, we have more brands. So how to say, we still have like Tesla is also a very good seller in China, but we have more local brands, which are much cheaper, really. So I would say for these Chinese EV cars, they are really difficult in Europe, because even they have the price efficiency, the price is good, but I would say it could be very critical situation for them if they selling the cars in Europe and the production is in China or the export. The thing is that cannot last for long. So it must change. I cannot say exactly the future will be, but the situation is not that easy. And the cars, because for them, it's also very difficult for them to sell in China, even they're already very cheap. So they want to win the international market. Some brands, they just go to Southeast Asia. But like the Great Walls, like the other cars, Chinese cars, EV cars go to Thailand. But some cars are just loose. So nobody knows in the future what will happen, because the supply chain,
you have so many brands.
Yes, and the cost things is very crucial. Just like you mentioned that, like for BYDs or some other brands, the price is really good. But how can they maintain the supply chain to keep this low price? And it's always affects the long-term cooperation with the suppliers, we would say. So let's see. It needs time.
So interesting talking to you. I need to make like a summary. First of all, you say that, Gigacasting, it's very trendy in Europe. It was trendy in China, but now it's in mass production, so now it's more about the capacity expansion. All right, a little bit punch of a nose on a European guy like that. And what you are talking about now, where academics and the society around the metallurgy is focusing on, is still, of course, optimizing the gigacasting aluminum, but basically the entry of magnesium in high volume production for interior parts and a lot of parts in going from small to big, as you said. Very, very nicely put, I would say. Yeah. And then what you're also saying is that you have a lot of car makers. They are exporting. They need to keep the volume up to make any kind of money, because this is a volume game. car making. This we know. So we probably see more and more in Europe. And the reason then is that we are seeing BYDs, Geelys building factories in Europe. And in this transition, we also find their favorite suppliers also starting die casting production in Europe. This is the summary so far.
Or maybe they bring Chinese brands there. Sorry.
Yeah. Interesting. But we need to make another summary before we can let you go, Tracy. Is it true then that the market for die casters in China has maybe been affected a little bit by EV transition in number of shots, but in overall, the number of castings is fairly okay, whilst it's going down in Europe and in the US?
Yeah, in China, I would say that it's stable and it's still prospective, because now the plants, they are looking for new opportunities, new applications, just like I mentioned. And it's also mentioned by Buehler when they have the show and they share with the industry that now the trend is not only auto parts, but also the 6Gs and also the robotics, and also for these airplanes or some other economic.
That we see it also in the numbers that the dependency of Chinese die casters to the automotive industry is way lower than in Europe. It's just about 60%. And again, I think we're coming back always to the same point. Yeah, you're doing collaboration and you're doing marketing, find new application with new alloys, new systems, new tools, and then start running from there and building up a new business cases. And I think these looping back and starting something new, that's what we can learn the rest of the world.
Yeah. The big nation of India that gave up cars and went for two-wheelers instead, because China already has position number 1 in cars.
Yeah.
There you go.
And sorry, I just want to share. I just want to interrupt to share the new applications. I find the word that actually I think we cannot miss this, because for the new applications, let's mention like humanoid robots and low altitude economy and 6G communications are the hottest trends. And
there's a lot of castings around all these.
Yeah, especially if you're now saying low altitude, let's call it by their names. It's about drones. And having magnesium castings in drones is quite good, as you build them in large volumes. It's a light metal and it gives you a lot of stiffness and stability. And yeah, that's a massively growing market.
And it will be 100% magnesium, believe me.
Yeah. And another interesting in China is that actually not only the die casters or automakers are purchasing Giga machine, but also those factories who used to only be auto parts, but they only have like the stamping process technology. And now they larger their production line to die casting. So these parts are also the newcomers for purchasing die casting lines.
That's a lot of digesting we have to do when you listen to that episode and see what's going on everywhere. And then looking at your own continent and just seeing price pressure push, everybody's crying about certain things, but nobody's looking to do some innovation. And yeah, it's great for China, but sad to see for your own continent. That's a bit of my personal summary. I don't know what you think, Staffan.
Yeah, I have a summary. I've been that much in China. Every time I go to China, I understand that I understand so little, and everything is fast. I've been traveling Asia since 1998, and I would say like this: if you want to understand it, maybe you're smarter than me, but I would call Tracy first. If you're going into China with a novelty, an innovation or something, and need to find the contacts. I mean, come on, let's be a little bit Americanized here. She's the lady of the day for making that happen. So reach out to Tracy. If you, however, wants to criticize me or Fabian for our episodes, or give us some tips or hints, or just kind of give us a topic for the next episode, please go ahead. And as always, don't forget to subscribe.
Okay. So I'm very happy that I can share some information, because I got the feeling that you're thinking Europe is slow and with different atmosphere. But of course, I still want to say that even I'm talking a lot about the Chinese brands, a lot of Chinese automakers, but actually I'm also in close relationship with a lot of international brands like Bühler or Fresh, a lot of companies. Actually, we are also friends. So when we look at them, when we look at in the whole big game, I would say that even the Chinese, we are doing more innovations, but still that the international brands play a very important role, because for China, it's still difficult to touch the rest of the world. But for these leading international brands like Bühler, like Fresh, or like other brands, they are around the world. They are in every continent. So like here in China, even we produce a lot of big machines, but still for us difficult to sell to Europe, to US. But like for Bühler, they easily can sell machines to different countries. And that's also bring the technologies. So I would say that it doesn't mean that now China is perfect or good or whatever. It's only because of that we have more competition, we have more pressure, and we want to earn money. So we are always looking for what's new and push the innovations ahead. But on the other hand, like if we compare with the technologies itself, for the solution of these giga machines or for the thixomolding technology, still like the European companies play a very important role. So it's not only from the technology's advantage side, but also they have like an overall view for the whole market. This is what cannot be replaced by any other country, you know. So we still need to learn from the European brands for their overall opinion, and which is quite important to study from each other. So it's not a closed
It's
market
a global
or
business.
closed industry. Yes, true. Business, technologies, everything transmit, and we just learn from each other. So that's why I want to join your episode, like what we will work together on. We are not only helping Chinese people, we are also helping the European markets to know more about what is happening in other places and what should be considered and what's our advantages and what's our next steps to be done. So that's what we think the episode, and we can bring out more values to the whole industry to help to develop, because we are all already in this industry for many years. I think there's some emotions inside.
There you hear, guys.
Yeah.
Stop speculating. Call Tracy. Get the knowledge, get the know-how. And the reason why I'm saying this, Tracy, is that we have had so many episodes where we have been talking to the investment in people, the investment in knowledge, the investment in information, instead of just buying machines, which is so many times more important than buying a new machine. Because where is the market going? Who to contact? Which industry will grow the next 15 years? These are the questions you should ask. Maybe not if you need another 600-ton machine the next week or the next year.
Yeah. So we have to be everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. It has been great to have you here, and I hope we rush into each other very, very quickly again. And looking forward to work with you, Tracy. And
thank you.
It will be an exciting future together, I would say.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, for these insight and that unique view on the Chinese market from within, which is unreachable to get that deep inside that market from our perspective. And thank you for that, for shining a light on secrets that were unreachable before.
So
Thank you very
sorry,
much.
actually, I would say that I just collect information from the ways that I have. But because actually in China, we have a lot of news. The things happened quickly here. If you look at the media, if you compare everything, it looks like that China, we have more exciting news every day. And for Europe, there's less news and less exciting news. So this is not a saying that we are not working diligent, but this is reflect the industry situation. So I really hope that the ways I collect information here, I'm not really creating any content or I have the knowledge by myself. I just collect. And in the future, I hope that I can bring more experts from China to episode, because I really believe that they have deeper insights than me.
Yeah, We're looking forward to it, and they are all your friends are always welcome to this podcast.
Thank you.
That's a perfect final words. So again, thank you, Tracy, and again, thank you, dear listener, for being with us today. And don't forget to subscribe. Looking forward to see you again. Bye.
Thank you. Me too. Bye bye.
See you in the next episode. Bye.
See you. Bye bye.